Beaver's right. We can't ever really protect anyone by hiding the truth from them. As you go through life, try to improve yourself, not prove yourself.
Now that you are on the surface again, be mindful of what is an underground man and machines produced. Not that all that came out of the mind was told. Now that you are on the surface again, be mindful of what is an underground man and machines produced. Not that all that came out of the mind was told. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know what I know.
Greetings, fellow Earth babies, and welcome to Post-Punk Heartstrings. I'm Jimmy James S. Butler, and you just heard a little clip montage that I threw together featuring the music of Beaver. Beaver is a band that came out of the UK in the city of Peterborough, just north of London. And you heard the song Chuck, Chuck, Chuck. Our guest today is Jonathan Womack, aka Jono. And he was one of the founding members of Beaver, which morphed into GovDan and finally into Youth of America. And this would have been in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. And then he had a bit of hiatus, as many artists do, with life-changing adulthood coming. And then, during the years of the pandemic, he found himself with a creative desire to revisit some of those older songs and also write new ones, and began working out of his home studio. He released his first album under the name Citizens of Yeah in 2023, and it was entitled Thermonuclear Warmth. This past year of 2024, he came out with his most recent release, Citizens Republic of Yeah. And all I can say is you are in for a treat. He's making beautiful, warm, heartfelt, rich music juxtaposed with contrasting lyrical content, which creates a really unique experience for the listener. My good friend Jim Anderson of Airedale introduced me to Citizens of Yeah, and from the very first moment of the very first song that I heard from this band of one, I was drawn in and hooked, and knew that I had to reach out and see if I can get Jono onto the program. He happily obliged, so without any further delay, let's jump right into the conversation. We have now left Peterborough and Beaver behind, and you all are now members of Citizens of Yeah! Hello.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Hello.
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
Hopefully you can hear us.
I can, yeah.
Well, hey, Jono? I'll call you Jono.
Jono.
Jono. Oh, excuse me. It's just like Bono, but it's Jono.
Yeah.
Jono. Okay, cool. Yeah. So welcome. Thanks for talking to us.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Appreciate you being here. I'll say your full name, Jonathan Womack. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
For the listeners, yeah. We'll call you Jono. I like that. I like nicknames a lot, so that works for me. Well, yeah, thanks again for joining us. And I was really excited about being able to chat with you. There's a lot of different artists, both people who are very established and known, and also people who are unknown or relatively unknown, independent type people like yourself. It's rare that an artist I hear, I don't even remember if Jim is the one who shared, probably he shared your music with me. Was it you, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Because I get so many feeds, and Jim gives me a lot of feeds of different artists. And sometimes I don't even remember who first told me about them. But you are one that, as soon as I heard it, it just grabbed me and drew me in. And then every song that I heard after that was the same. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
I know it's probably a little bit weird to hear that, but yeah, it's not, that doesn't happen very often. So I was like, I gotta reach out and get this guy on and be able to talk to him about his music. And I couldn't remember at the point when I was going to reach out, I couldn't remember where I heard about you. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to reach out. And I told Jim, and then I remembered that you and Jim had been either talking or collaborating with, different things. So,
chatting for quite a while.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start off with that and then tell you how excited I am and how much I love what you're doing. I'm a little floored that not as many people are hearing about your music, and I know it's pretty new within the last probably maybe a couple years. I can't remember when thermonuclear warmth came out, but I know it's been pretty recent. And so I think there's only a couple supporters on Bandcamp, and I'm like, what the hell? This should not be. We must change this. So we're going to do everything we can to help change that. So that's kind of my little introduction. I was just hoping that you could start and just tell us a little about where you are from, where you're living now, and kind of your background right now.
Sure. I just want to say one thing actually before that. I was involved in bands in like the late 90s, and that's when I was trying to make music and that sort of thing. But so I haven't been involved with it for so long, and I just think it's absolutely incredible. First, that we're in a world where I can come across Jim's music, and then start chatting to him, and then the listeners that I have got on Spotify, I can now see where they're from, and it's amazing that there's people in Mexico and the United States, and for them to be able to listen is just incredible. I think compared to like burning a CD, giving it to some people,
Set.
Yeah, it's absolutely cassette. Yeah, whatever. It's just absolutely going to a recording studio. Even that was you don't need to now. It's amazing.
It was expensive.
Absolutely,
and expensive. Yeah. It's we saved up nearly all of our money to go to a recording studio for like a day or two to have a spotty teenager who's I don't think knew what they were doing behind the mixing desk, in a converted barn. It was so you can probably for the listeners, I don't know what the spread of your listeners is, but obviously I'm from England. I'm sure they can tell that from my accent. So I live now in a town called Newcastle, which is up in the northeast of England. So it's about as north as you can get. It's a decent sized town. The sort of metropolitan area is about 3 million people. But it's kind of a long way from anywhere else in England. I mean, long distances in England are quite short, but it's an hour, it's a good hour on the train, 2-hour drive to Edinburgh. To the south, there's York and Leeds. They're about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So it's got its own sort of little enclosed culture to some degree. But I've never really been part of that music scene because I'm not originally from here. So I'm from a town called Peterborough, which is just north of London. It's not close enough to be London to be part of London. You don't feel like you're a Londoner. You'd never go, I go to London on the train a few times a year, but nothing more than that. And obviously London's got a vibrant music scene, lots going on. Peterborough is very dull. There's never been a band from Peterborough.
Until now.
I think one of the things I was reading about the Beaver, I think was like, it was talking about the Peterborough scene or whatever.
There was one guy who had a record label, but it was record label that would print 50 copies of a single. It was not a pretty small town. There was a lot of the bands in Peterborough were really heavy. So it was so we were an indie band really, but we were an indie band that were playing in a place where a lot of it was hardcore, sort of post-punk. And so we got quite heavily influenced by that. And then when we went to other places, we realized that we were much heavier than your typical
by
typical indie band. And so I'm from a town called Peterborough. I'm not even from Peterborough. I'm from a small town outside Peterborough, which is like Middle England, sleepy. It's the sort of place where you film a period drama about the Tudors, proper dull Middle England, which to people from the other side of the Atlantic is like charming and stuff. But when you live there, it's a bit, it's fine, but it's just a bit boring.
Yeah,
we got towns.
Yeah,
all over.
I'm sure you do. Yeah, but very pleasant. Nice place to bring up children and that sort of thing, but not a good place to be a teenager. And I got into playing guitar. I mean, I'm in my early 40s, so I got Blur versus Oasis was the big thing in the UK in the early 90s, and guitar music was pop music. So you sort of fell on one side or the other, and I was more of a Blur fan than an Oasis fan, but then very quickly got into other guitar bands. So like Radiohead then became a really big driver. Radiohead were kind of like me and my mates in a way. We were sort of, we weren't, Radiohead are quite a middle class band. They all went to university and these sorts of things. That was sort of felt a bit more identifiable. I wasn't, like Oasis, wasn't cool enough or anything like that. So, or what I perceived to be then. So then we got into a band, and then not much has happened then. I went to university, started working, 20 years of not really doing very much. I had a brief period in a hospital accommodation in Carlisle, which is now, if Carlisle is in the middle of nowhere, if Peterborough is in the middle of nowhere, Carlisle really is. It's like an hour west of me, middle of nowhere, very rural. And I'd just got an iPad for the first time. And of course, GarageBand was there. There wasn't much else to do. So I wrote a load of demos on an iPad. And I'd say that about 75% of those are the stuff that I've recorded in the last couple of years. Some of it's new, but some of it's just fleshing out the old ideas that I had. So I've just basically started going through those and trying to turn them into something what I consider to be proper rather than messing around on an iPad. But it's quite nice because the songs are relatively formed to start with. You've got a framework there and then you can flesh it out. But I suppose the even more exciting thing has been learning how to record a mix. Did a bit in the studio. But I never really was the person on the other side. I was never thinking about EQ and compression and those sorts of things. And so learning all of that and then learning how to craft a song together has been really, really enjoyable.
Awesome. And I want to talk about that some more for sure. I'm going to back you up just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
If that's okay. Yeah. And that was great. Thanks
that
for
was like
that.
That's the story of my life.
Yeah. And that's what I asked for, which is great.
Some of it,
yeah. I want it all. Okay, it's going to go for several hours.
Let's start with each one.
We're not going to edit anything. So let's back up just a little bit. How old were you when you started, playing an instrument and making music, or kind of getting interested in, writing or playing music or wanting to do that?
So my mum never played a musical instrument, and my dad liked music, but was never, he played a little bit of guitar, but always had records on and things. So I always listened to music. He liked the Beatles. So I listened to a lot of Beatles. He had, lots of records from the 70s and 80s as well. So I grew up listening to his records, and my mum really wanted me to play an instrument because she felt that she'd never had the opportunity to. So I had piano lessons and violin lessons. So I had those from, I must have been about 8 or something like that. So, relatively young. So I did those for years, and I picked up violin quite quickly, but was really disinterested in it. I think you have to be really, really, really good at the violin to make it sound nice. And you are limited in what you can play to some degree, especially if you're not in an orchestra or playing with other people. And we obviously never really did folk music and that sort of thing. It was always classical stuff if you're going to learn it in a sort of classical way. And then learned piano, and I was terrible at piano. I've never really been able to play it. I just don't, I can. But I think the combination of that makes it really easy to pick up guitar, because violin has got the hand movement of the guitar, and piano gives you insight into chords and chord progressions and those sorts of things. So when I started listening to guitar music, I wanted to play guitar, and my dad said, right, well, if you learn how to play a song, and he had a songbook on his old acoustic guitar, he said, I'll get you a electric guitar. And that was, I think he told me later that he wasn't actually expecting me to do it, it was basically a fob off.
That's a great test though, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I learned I don't know if it's Obla Di, Obla Da, or like it was a Beatles song, definitely. It was So I learned that, and so then the deal was electric guitar. So I got that one Christmas, and I must have been 12, 13, something like that. But then I didn't really start in a band until we were about 15, because and we were 15 definitely, and my other friends were learning at that point, so we sort of learnt to play guitar together.
Yeah,
and with three of us were guitarists, and then at some point we had to say, right, well, who's going to be the bass guitarist?
Yeah.
And I kind of got away with it because I could sing. I was the only one that would sing. That's probably the right way to say it. That I didn't. That I sort of got away with not playing the bass, although the agreement was that I would sometimes play the bass. One guy never played it, and then the other guy and me swapped. And essentially, we weren't good enough to play covers. You have to play a cover. You have to learn the lyrics. You have to work out how to play all the different. And this is before YouTube tells you how to play something. That was when I learned the drums in lockdown. It was amazing, the resources that you've got. You'd have to buy a chord book, or you'd have to just play the music over and over and listen to how. So we just weren't good enough. So we wrote our own songs, and then it suddenly became apparent that actually it wasn't that difficult to write your own songs, or we didn't think it was. It was and really interesting and more rewarding to do that. So that was it. I think we did one or two covers ever, and they were always of another local band songs or something.
Covers of another local band. That's awesome.
yeah. And that was it really. So from then on, started writing songs.
Cool. What was the first album you bought with your own money? Like, you chose to buy it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I'm assuming it's right around about that time, probably.
Yeah.
That's usually 12 or 13. That's when people are.
Yeah. So it was. I had Park Life bought for me as a birthday present or a Christmas present, and so it may have been definitely maybe or something like that, or it would be a Britpop album of that time. Yeah, possibly, definitely, maybe.
What is it? How is the Verve? Is that what you said, Jim?
The Verve, yeah.
Yeah. So how do we feel? How do people feel in England about Oasis? I mean, it's like you love them or hate them, and you also but it was pretty damn good when it came out.
Yeah,
I mean, it was.
Yeah. So I really, when I was 12, it was absolutely incredible. I think they're broadly still pretty popular. The tickets for the shows sold out. I think as my music tastes matured, there was less in it for me, and so I listened. I can't say that I listened to them that often. I basically don't really listen to them anymore. But I did really, really like them. But they are broadly very popular. I mean, I think in terms of, I don't think they're revered as heroes. Everyone knows that they're.
Yeah.
They'll
You've seen all the there's all
later.
Sorts of memes now, right? This is the reunion we want. It'll be like The Cure or like the Smiths, and then and this is the reunion we got or something. Something. So
I think
I kind of feel a little bad for them. I mean, this is the same thing for me and probably most people at the time. You're like. Their hits and stuff were, those are so good, but it's like, okay, it faded pretty quickly. Like the interest, you moved on. Yeah. You're hearing Radiohead and other bands, but
they're quite one-dimensional, aren't they? Beyond, they got some good songs.
That's what it's about.
But they had one sound, and it never.
Right.
I think they're very main. An attitude. Yeah,
and that didn't help them.
They got mainstream popularity. So I would say that the people, they're selling the tours out, but I don't know if they've necessarily got the critical.
Yeah, exactly.
And critically acclaimed, I wouldn't necessarily say. Yeah. Probably, I imagine, much like America, I would imagine that's a similar.
I think so.
I would imagine.
Jim, you agree? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I was reading something.
That's okay. You were preparing another question, weren't you?
I mean, what was the question? Was how are they seen in the States? Is that the question?
Yeah. Well, in England, but I think in the States it's probably about the same way.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, nobody probably takes it seriously.
Yeah.
I don't think I think the new Cure album was a lot more exciting for people more recently than that they're on.
Really?
Tour.
Yeah. I mean, the new Cure album was definitely critically well received here, but I wouldn't have heard anyone at work talking about it.
Okay.
Not like, not people that aren't into music.
Yeah.
I don't think it would
I think that's probably the same here, even though it seems like it, but the groups we travel in, or they're listening to the same music. So, but I mean, I think over the years, it probably there have been other bands that did albums within our listening group that are like, I'm not sure. But the Cure, their latest album, I think, is pretty unanimous as far as, how people, feel about it.
Yeah, and so long since, the sort of reunion you'd expect to be like the Oasis style one, go out, do a tour and crack out your old hits. But no, they've actually, it's been worth it, hasn't it? It's absolutely.
But I think a lot of the bands from the 80s are putting out good stuff now. I think the Furs are still doing really good stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of other bands too. But so Oasis is what you think was your probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that cool to say, is it? Really?
Well, hey,
but I've got to be honest.
I don't know.
It's not bad. Could be a lot worse. Could be a lot worse.
Yeah. I think what was my first album was probably the Bay City Rollers or something like that. That was given to me.
That's cool.
I think that I wanted was like probably Adamant, and I'm still a fan of Adamant, but he's not huge as far as fan listenership. I don't think overall, but anyway,
not anymore.
There's a lot to be embarrassed about, in your early teens and your music choices, and nothing to be ashamed about. So, what are some of the bands that like had a major influence on you? And I think you might have mentioned a couple when you first began making music.
So Radiohead, definitely. So that was, and I suppose their sort of journey in music was similar to my, as I was getting more interested in different sorts of stuff, they'd always do it a bit better than I'd envisaged it. But so. And anyone would,
Yeah. Well, have a quick side question. I don't go down the rabbit trail. But what if because I feel like Radiohead, Pablo Honey, that was their first album, I think. Yeah. So I feel like that was kind of relatively, in some ways, relatively generic. The album. Yeah, so what if they had not, if they had done the same album that over again, they might have been Oasis. But,
absolutely, yeah. But, absolutely, definitely.
You could really see the creativity and them pushing the boundaries, So anyway,
I mean,
sorry.
Each time it was interesting. Then, like I said, became much more of a Blur fan. So, and they did a similar thing. So obviously, they became quite commercial with the next release, but then they started to explore a bit. And Graham Coxon, I always liked as a guitarist. I thought he was really quite innovative. And but then we started listening to the stuff that influenced that. And so, we then, a bit more Nirvana and those sorts of things. And then going back to the Pixies and the Smiths. So my dad had lots of Smiths records. So I was familiar with them. But so I got really into the Smiths and really into the Pixies. And then Joy Division, and then so sort of generally more sort of 80s stuff, I guess, at that point. But then I also started getting into sort of lots of the instrumental bands of the late 90s, early 2000s. So Mogwai from Glasgow, and then Godspeed, You Black Emperor, and things like that. And really liked the sort of post-rock stuff. So I think those were big influences for us. I'm trying to think what else, if there was anything obvious else. Those kind of things, really.
Yeah, that's great. So this is probably in the 90s, right? Were you a teenager in the 90s or mid 90s?
Yeah,
or?
Yeah. Okay. So mid 90s to
cool.
the sort of late 90s.
Yeah, sweet. So what was the first band you were in? I read about Beaver, but I'm sure you had, No, I didn't know if you tried anything before that. Okay.
No, that was the first one. So, in fact, it's basically the only band I've been in. kind of, in the sense that if I'm in a band now, can you be a band of one person? I don't know.
Yeah, you can. Jim can do it. If Jim can do it, you can do it.
I don't know.
Every band I've been in has one member that's been in all those bands, which is me, obviously,
Right.
which would be the same for everyone. We were called Beaver, and that's because I lived on a road called Beaver Way, and when we were, and then someone said you can't call a band Beaver because of obviously the connotations, and we thought, well, if you're going to say you can't, we're going to do it, so we did it. And then we basically went through. We did that for a couple of years. We were doing okay. We got some gigs in London, so we played in London a few times. We went to play in Manchester and Sheffield, and across the UK, usually to an empty room. But we were starting to play in venues that had a bit of kudos and stuff. And then the bass player went away for a couple of months, so we decided to form a new band, which was the same people, but we just decided to write a new batch of songs.
Can I try to say the name of the next band?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Good Dan.
Yeah, it was. So it's Govdan.
Govdan. Okay.
Govdan, and that's Peterborough, a sort of Peterborough accent of saying Govdan. Sorry,
Okay.
government, Govdan, down.
Gotcha.
And it was we were basically we thought it'd be funny to have like a very political, pretend to be a very political band, but not really have any focused ideology apart from that we wanted to bring the government down, and then once we brought it was kind of anarchy, but definitely tongue in cheek. There was no there was a lot of very political bands in Peterborough at that time, and we just thought it was kind of funny to pretend to be like very anarchistic, but
and then you
really
transformed into Youth of America from that.
Yeah,
that's funny.
So then when the bassist came back, we transformed again into Youth of America because we thought, well, we've rewritten a load of songs. We scrapped it all again and then started again and wrote another batch of songs. But Youth of America was closest to the older band Beaver. Govdown was kind of was more like Mogwai, or we were generally instrumental. I played violin on some of the songs, and we had. And the idea with Youth of America was that partly we weren't from America, so it was a deliberately ridiculous name, and we'd spelt America differently. We spelt bits of it differently each time, so it was never consistently spelt the same way. That was going to be our little gimmick.
That's like your gimmick. Yeah.
So pathetic when you're on your own. It's like a pig behind the wheel, and all the ink is running everywhere. I can't clean it up with a hole. Hate the buzz, hate the buzz, hate the buzz, hate the buzz, hate the buzz. Hate the buzz, hate the buzz, hate the buzz. As she tries to fade the truth away, she turns and then she goes and hides. Becomes the idle image of herself.
When I was reading about different interviews and stuff, and I was looking for websites and searching up band names, Govdan came up, and there's a website for Govdan, and it had to have been. It's got to be pretty old, right? Late 90s, maybe.
Oh, it must be
or early 2000s.
Yeah.
You all were youngins, and you wrote these really funny, like quirky bios. Yeah. So everyone should go look at that. Jim, if you haven't gone, I'll send you a link to it. But listeners should go look at that because it's entertaining just to go and check that site out.
I'm astonished that that's still there. Yeah.
It still exists. Yeah.
You're not paying for it, are you?
Yeah. God knows.
Nobody's paying for it, I hope.
Yeah.
It's just sitting there. It's like a little treasure to be found.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bios were funny. Like under each person, it's pretty creative. But anyway, had to mention that. But But yeah, so that was kind of so those were the bands you were in, and I don't want to, if you want to say more about that, that's great. I didn't mean to cut off, but
No,
so
that's fine.
but I think you kind of wrapped up with Youth of America, like maybe in early 2000, very early, like 2001 or something, and then
Maybe it was possibly a bit later. Actually, it was. So started uni in, or I guess you college is. Do people say uni in America? Yeah.
We know you say it.
Yeah.
That's what's
in
important.
2001, and we all had a year off after school, and that's when we did gigs. And then, so in that year, we were in 3 bands, all with the same people, all with different songs. So but Youth of America, we continued for a couple of years after we all went to university. So that was one where we'd come back, we'd do a gig and then go back. But then it wasn't, it's hard to. I was in Newcastle. One of the other guys was in Paris. One was in Manchester. One was in London. So it's difficult to maintain. And I toyed with the idea. I wanted to, I was open to the idea of forming a band up here. But the problem is, a lot of people have never, a lot of people at university form a band for the first time when they're at university. And I'd been through that whole process of meeting people, deciding if you like the same music, and then because we all had our formative years at the same time, so we grew up kind of with similar interests and introducing ourselves to different music and things. And then we go to university, people have never known a band, so having to go through all that stuff again just didn't appeal to me, so just never really happened.
Did you have a goal when you were in, at that time when you were kind of that I guess we'll call it a chapter was kind of ending, like, were you like, oh, was music just being in bands and writing music and stuff, was that just kind of like something you enjoyed? You weren't like trying to, try to get established and build a bigger audience or whatever, or was it just the distance that killed that anyway?
I think before going to university, I think the idea was to try and get signed to a record label. And then once we got to university, it became apparent that probably that wasn't no longer going to happen. And we wouldn't be able to continue, the distances that were there. And then once you've left home as well, people that you were at school with, you start to grow apart from, don't you? You start to have different views of the world. We all did very different things. So, but yeah, it was that was the original aspiration. But then once I started working and those sorts of things, it just falls by the wayside a bit.
Yeah. And so you had a bit of an extended, we'll call it an extended break, I guess. Between
I think so, yeah.
Writing music and part of that was because at the time there wasn't all the like out at home studios. What are they called? DAWs and
yeah.
You didn't have all that, right? So it's like, okay, so I guess you're going about your life like, okay, I guess you didn't have as much creative outlet, way to do it.
I still play guitar. I still wrote songs. I still, messed about in my bedroom and things with my guitar. But that only goes so far, doesn't it? I did a bit of like acoustic nights and those sorts of things for a little bit. But I've got nothing against like acoustic guitar music. But from my perspective, there's only so much that you can do with it. You can do a little finger picking song, but then you don't have the same dynamics. You don't have the same range of sounds that you have with an electric guitar, and no drums. I mean, to me, drums are a massive part of guitar music, aren't they? They make a band to some degree, and you couldn't do that. So yeah, it was just casual. It was, there was no, and then again, I never really found anyone that was in a similar position who'd had a bit of experience. Should have put an advert somewhere that said, need someone with some experience of being in a band who likes these sorts of things. I mean, and you say that, the doors and stuff didn't exist. You could get a 4-track recorder, and we managed to borrow one. And, it's what you could do with that was nothing ever sounded any good. We were so excited to start trying to use it. And then you try and record some drums with it. With one microphone. On a cassette.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Absolutely ludicrous.
The hiss. There's a hiss in the background.
At the time, everybody's all excited though. Like, oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was, absolutely.
But because comparatively, you did, it's like inexpensive, But yeah, cool. So, after this break, how did you transition from being, a band member writing, recording, and then now you're doing that and producing on your own and, at home alone. You have your own studio, your own producer. You do it everything pretty much. You might collaborate with some, occasionally, but so how did that transition go,
So I suppose my little foray into GarageBand on the iPad. So I'd had some experience in the studio, like not extensive, but we'd been to recording studios where you multi-track. We'd record in a certain way. We'd lay down a guide track and then put the other instruments on top of it. So I remembered how to mic up a guitar amp and these sorts of things. And then when I was messing about on GarageBand, I probably did that for a few years, and again got myself familiar again with multi-tracking stuff, with panning and those sorts of things. But I wouldn't say that the music production was particularly good at that point. I didn't really know how to do mixing or anything like that. But I got more familiar again with how to construct a song, how to build something, because all of our songs were generally written in jams. So we'd start, one person would take a riff, and then we'd all play that riff, and then they'd say, this is the chorus riff, or someone else would say, this riff is the chorus. And sometimes, like, someone would say, I've got this riff, and it just happened to work with the other one. So, it was relatively spontaneous, and then you'd get the structure, and then then I'd work out a melody over the top of it sometimes. Whereas when you're on your own, you can't do that same thing. So it's a slightly different mindset, because you can't really jam with yourself. So you just have to learn to sort of play a riff and then work out what the drum beat's going to be, and then build it up from there. And Jim will obviously have lots of experience at this, but it takes a while to. It takes a while, to get used to it, doesn't it? It's a very different process.
Can't be afraid to make mistakes. I mean, just because that's how you learn. That's how you learn how to get better at it. Yeah,
absolutely. And then I think the real sort of shift was when lockdown happened. I was about to go to a conference in Denver, which I was really looking forward to, but then obviously lockdown happened, and I decided that this was going to be for a while, and I needed something to do. And I got the money back from the flight to Denver and bought a electric drum kit, because I decided that I'm going to learn the drums.
Nice.
And then so I spent about 6 months just getting my vague feel for it, being able to move my hands independently and things. And then I thought, well, how do you know if you're any good? How do you get better at the drums? And I read about a few things, and it said the best way is to record yourself and then listen back. And then I thought, I wonder if it might be quite interesting to re-record some of those old songs with me playing the drums. And so then I did that, and then I thought, maybe I should try and record then it just snowballed, and that's all it's just been. And then I thought, it'd be interesting to write some songs again. And then each step of the way, you think, well, why doesn't it sound like, In Rainbows? And then you realize, you go, okay, I'll have to go back and listen to it. Yeah. Well, I have to go and listen to that. And it's because it's recorded in a much better studio. But, you then start to work out. And then it got to a point where the first album I'd recorded, and I spent about a year with the songs recorded. Well, I say finished, but I'd recorded them to the degree that I was happy with it at the time, and then I'd mixed it for a year, and then tried to master it, and had about 7 goes at that, and learning how to do that. And then at some point, I had to say, right, I need to stop fiddling with this, because what I actually need to do is go back and record it all again, if I'm going to be, to make it any better, because there was no difference each time that I was. So I thought, well, I probably reached the end of that process. So then I released it on Spotify, just because I thought that is a final record of. It's like making a CD version of it, isn't it, for the modern age, but on streaming. There are other streaming services that are better. But and then the second album was basically a mixture of songs that I found too difficult to do on the first one, and songs that it's basically slightly more. It was the stuff that I found too tricky to do, and then a couple of extra songs that I wrote. And I think the challenge there with the next one was to make it sound better than the first one, production wise.
So I want to talk about the difference between your first album and your second one, kind of what you alluded to. I wanted to first, Jim asked this question, and I also had the same question. What is the origin of your name, the band name?
Yeah.
Or do you want to share that? Sometimes
Yeah, no,
people
that's
don't want to
fine.
share.
So I'd love to say that there is a complicated story behind it. So it's really hard. I mean, Airedale, it says something about you, but it also, like, if I've got no idea, it just sounds cool. It's also really easy to have a bad name for a band. But then sometimes bands that have a bad name, it turns into a good name because they're good.
Exactly.
So, so I wanted something that sounded cool, but not too pretentious. And so I went, and I was just putting loads of different things down, and couldn't think of anything. So I went on a internet band name generator, and it came up with something like Citizens of something or other, and or Citizen something like that. And I thought, it'd be quite cool to have a name which sounds like it's citizens of, but it sounds like it's going to be something that you could be a citizen of. But then the thing at the end of it is something that you can't be a citizen of. And then I tried I wanted initially something sound related, but then I didn't get there. And Citizens of Sounds, I think it's either a band or a record label or something like that. And then so I just thought, that was it.
That's great.
And it had a touch of humor, touch of surreal, and
it's touch of excitement. Citizens of yeah,
exactly, yeah,
that's cool,
but not too much excitement.
A little bit too much. I've seen different versions of it. I think it says Citizens of and is in all capitals.
Yeah,
like is that how you intended it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes it's got exclamation marks behind it as well.
Maybe multiple. Like 3. Exactly. Yeah. Depends on how excited you are when you're
at that time.
And which song it is, Your first album, okay, so I have listened to both, and I really like them both. On the thermonuclear warmth, there was a lot of I think you double tracked the vocals, I think, on that.
Almost exclusively. Yeah,
it sounds a little more echoey, not in a bad way, but it reminds me of Band of Horses or something. Like it's kind of like a cavernous, echoey type of sound, and punchy drums. And then Citizens Republic of it the vocals are seem a lot more intimate and warm, kind of up front, sort of, and it just has a really warm feel, and with the bass and the drums kind of offsets a little bit, and the guitars kind of meandering for the most part. There's a little bit of that, so they have very different sounds to me. Was there an intentional change between any of those things, or your production or recording process, between the two albums? Or?
So there was not necessarily an intentional difference. The drums, I think I was just better at knowing how to mix drums. I got better at it in the process of doing the second album, and some of that came from the guy Daniel Clifford, who I did some backing vocals on Three Little Piggies. You're saying about how do you manage as a one person band? One of the hardest things actually is getting feedback, because it's very difficult to. So I met him on the back of he turned out to be from the same village that I live in, but we didn't know each other. But he read a review in one of the local magazines, so we started going to the pub and chatting, and he's got a band called Amateur Ornithologist. I met another guy who lived in the village down the road, who has a band called The Generous Nest, a chap called Arlo. And so I then had two people to bounce off. And Arlo had said, I can't remember which song it was. He'd said that I imagine it like Slint playing a song with Bell and Sebastian singing it. So I listened to loads and loads and loads of Slints to the drums, and I just thought, I'm going to try and replicate that sound, which obviously is. So the drums are MIDI, by the way. So I record them. I play electric drums in MIDI, I haven't quite got the technical sophistication to record. Well, I don't have an acoustic drum kit, but I'd love to. But that's an extra level of. So that's what I was aiming for, and then I realised that because I was listening to so many different drums, and I was listening to lots of Steve Albini drums, you start listening to drums in a different way, don't you? When you listen to lots of them. And
you start trying to figure out what type of drum sounds makes this sound, and what's
absolutely. How do I make the snare sound like that, and these sorts of things. And so the drums sound different because I think I got much better at mixing drums and understanding how to mix them. And I was listening to it the other day, and I think the individual, like the snare, for example, on some of the songs on the first album sounds really good, but it doesn't sound like a drum kit together. And I think I did that much better on the second album, bringing the drums as a bass is the hardest bit, I think, to mix. To some of it is recording and mixing it. Now the vocals is an interesting one. The reason the vocals are double tracked on the first album and not on the second album is partly that I wasn't as good at mixing and recording the vocals on the first album, and they just sounded terrible if I single tracked them.
Gotcha.
And then I got better at it. I bought a new microphone and learned, just got better. And on the second album, initially it was double tracked, and actually there's a couple of choruses that are double tracked for emphasis. And whilst I kind of like the signature sound of the double track vocals on the first album, when I started to single track stuff, it opened up the mix much more. And I felt that, and I was more confident in the sound of my voice and my mixing ability, that I was able to make it sound better. And I didn't feel that it needed the double tracking. Some of the double tracking on the first one is hiding a poor vocal performance. And I'm better at mixing to hide a poor vocal performance.
EQ
awesome.
Really helps too.
Yeah, EQ.
I love
exactly,
it. I think it's. I like both, and I know it's like the ear of the beholder, like what you prefer or whatever. I really like the sort of intimate, like more clear upfront kind of. It's mixed well. It's not like upfront. I shouldn't say that, but the wild swans and the go betweens and and the Smiths. It's kind of like that vocal. It's kind of
quite dry. It's not got loads of a delay or reverb on it, whereas the first one does have quite a lot of it. Yeah,
exactly.
That's slightly stylistic. Sometimes you react to what you did the previous time, don't you? It's just to make it. I like the sound of the dry.
Yeah, and sometimes I like the more echoey too. It just depends. But I tend to gravitate towards the more rich, I just feel more intimate, when I'm listening to music. But and you mentioned Slint, because when I was reading a little bit, when you were talking about that, I had never heard of Slint. Maybe Jim has.
Not really. I think maybe
I gotta check them out though, because I looked up Spiderland and Slint, and I was listening to it a little bit, and it was pretty interesting and pretty obscure. But the fans that comment are like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever," So it sounded pretty interesting, and I think they were super young when they were making music.
Yeah, they only made 2 albums. The first one is slightly more chaotic, a bit more punky, and the second one, it's Spiderland. I don't know how I came across it, but I didn't think they were that obscure. And then on Spotify, you can tell how popular a band is. They don't have very,
or if they're even there. Sometimes it's like, okay, they're not. Yeah. And you can see how if you're less than 1,000 or whatever, then you're probably But anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. So I made a note. I sent them myself a link to listen to that more. So Jim wanted to know, we're going to get into some of the songs on Citizens Republic of Yeah. He wanted to know, did you ever lie on the tarmac?
No. So a handful of the lyrics. So I think you can definitely tell. So my ex-bandmate is a chap called Ed Bagheera, and he was the lyricist of the band that I was in. So there are a handful of songs for which he wrote the lyrics. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else on the latest album. I think there is not. Now that song is actually an old Beaver song. So it was the last Beaver song that we never recorded. And it was we never did. Well, I think I played it at one band practice. And so he wrote the lyrics. And so I didn't tell him that I was recording it, just because I thought it'd be quite fun just to record it and see if he even remembered it. Because, it's a song that he maybe heard once or twice, wrote some lyrics for 20 years ago, and I didn't think he'd remember it, but he did, which is quite cool. But yeah, so it was sort of like about to become a song, but then never did. So it's been sat there for 20 years. So that and he wrote the lyrics. I've got no idea what it's about. I think
I have thoughts, but they're all over the place.
yeah. So I think it may have been based about a book he wrote. A book he read. Songs were based on a story from a book, and I think it's about a hypochondriac. I think, but I mean,
that would make sense, I guess, with some of the lyrics. I was like trying to figure it out. Okay, like there's this up. Hold me, I'm leaving. I'm like, is this guy dying? He's waiting for the ambulance. Is he? Who knows?
Yeah, I think maybe he thinks he is, but
drunk.
Probably.
There's a story there. There's a plane, and they get.
He's about to get on a flight. And he's drunk and he passed out on the tarmac. That's where I get from it.
You have got, so keep yourself quiet. Having fun with my emphysema, typhoid, cholera, PVC, plastic skin, polyester, keep me in. Having fun with my therapist, digging for a cure. Lost my fears, a new life. Can't find my alibi. Caught for possession of firearms, narcotics, literature. And I know what you have got, so keep yourself quiet. Having fun with my therapist, digging for a cure.
And when Jim asked that question, did you ever lie on the tarmac? I was thinking of that movie. Like, did you ever see Pushington? Was a movie with John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton, and they're lying there by on the tarmac when the planes take off. That's what I thought of. So I was like, okay, has Jono ever done that? No.
No, that one's not autobiographical. So,
the movie was actually about John.
That's right.
The movie was autobiographical. The song isn't. Although the interesting thing is the tarmac on the picture of the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
I lay that tarmac. So when I say lay it, I repaired the hole that I dug for my car charger with a bit of tarmac on top of it. So the little thin strip along the middle is my tarmac. So
there's your tarmac. Blown up into the single cover. We were going to mention Three Piggies, and I think it listed on somebody contributed to that as far as the credits. I kind of, but you can tell me about that.
So that was the chap Daniel from the band Amateur Ornithologist. So he'd been really, really helpful with feedback. I got chatting to him. His band released an album about 6 months maybe. It was about this time last year, called Hide, and he did a remix album. So he basically asked 10 local bands to do remixes or re-recordings of his songs. So I did one. I kept the drums and the vocals and re-recorded the guitars. So I did a version of one of his songs, and so I thought it'd be quite nice to for him to be involved with the album. And he'd suggested that that bit of the chorus, I sang it's like a call and answer thing, and I sang the second bit. And he said it just feels like it needs a bit more in that pathy bit. So I thought, well, why doesn't he come and sing it? And that was quite nice. And it was nice to have someone else involved. And it just gives you that feedback. And it was quite interesting. His friend runs a recording studio down the road. And I think they were in a band together when they were younger. So I've met him quite a few times as well. So but they're just interesting people to bounce ideas off, and so that was really good.
Jim wanted to know if Three Piggies symbolizes anything.
It does, yeah. So, well, there's two things. So the song it took me about 6 months to write that song. I had this idea of a kind of choppy sort of guitar riff, like early 2000s. I had Annual Nerves by the Trail of Dead in my head, like a kind of choppy riff. And then I was also listening to quite a lot of XTC at the time. And so I wanted to have like a sort of 80s jangly bit, sort of, counterbalanced against that. Mm. So I had the riff and the jangly guitar. And then, so I'd had most of the guitar riff written for about 6 months. And I did the drums, and then I did the bass, and the bass kind of was the melody that I had in my head. So I had this bass line that's quite melodic, goes do 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 like that, and that was the tune that I had in my head. So then I found it really, really difficult to come up with any tune or melody. And my nephew, who was 3, then asked me if I could write a song about wolves.
At the door.
I thought, why not? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and it was about the same time that we were getting our super inflation was a bit after yours. So we were getting interest rates rising. There was a general election not too far away, and I thought once I thought there's not many things to write songs about wolves about, and I thought the fairy tale, but you can bring it more modern. It's the wolves trying to steal your house.
Sticks and stones make porcine homes a varied success. You huffed and puffed and it's not enough. We've come to inspect. Don't shut yourself away. It's time for you to pay. Don't shut yourself away. This isn't a fairy tale. Time to show our teeth. Time to show our teeth. Time to show our teeth. Wolves at the door. 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 Wolves at the door.
And then you wrote another song about wolves. So you're like, it's there's not many songs about wolves, so I'm gonna write another one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we'll call them dogs though. war dogs.
Yeah. And it's the very next song on it. Yeah. Now that one, I misheard someone say the word war dog. It was about the same time as Wagner Group were making a name for themselves in Ukraine, and I thought they sound like war dogs. I'll write a song about Ukraine.
Yeah,
I guess
that's yeah. It seems like there's like some political stuff in some of these, but it's not like out there too much. You know what I mean? Like your face, I guess maybe. But
yeah, I don't. Yeah, and I don't want to push political. Yeah, I don't want to push political views onto anyone. I think I'm quite a pragmatist, and I think there's no right way to see the world, but there is no right way to see the world. But I think most of us agree that mercenaries are probably. Well, it's not really. I'm not really necessary. I'm just sort of making a comment about how they bit too hard, and then all of a sudden they were no more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I had a question
Not two
about
of it.
that.
What you got, Jim?
My question was, is War Dogs an homage to Pink Floyd or Motley Crue? Dogs of War?
It's not. It's neither.
Neither.
It's
Neither.
it's neither. Yeah, neither. It was a misheard. Someone referred to someone, and I thought they called them a war dog. And that was
War dog.
yeah.
Inspiration
Again,
comes from everywhere, including misheard phrases.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then, God is my right.
Yeah.
Definitely has like a political type attempt to it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that meant. I had to look that up. Like, I don't know if it's alluding to this or not, but it's the UK, like the motto or whatever. Like, is that an allusion to that or not? God and my right.
That was an old song, but it had pretty terrible lyrics. It had lyrics that were never really fully thought through. Sometimes I just have I have a tune
that was
and I don't have any lyrics.
You picked up, like
exactly
that you wrote a while back.
Yeah, and I wanted something to write the song about. I try and have some. It's all the songs are about something. And whether that's something totally random, like a subatomic particle or a dinosaur or whatever. The thing is usually something to anchor it all around. Unless Ed wrote the lyrics, in which case usually I've got no idea what it's about because they're quite obscure. And sometimes I quite like to write a song about something that is pretty mundane or something that you wouldn't normally write a song about, and then try and make it a bit more. But God is my right was, I was trying to think, what am I going to write this song about? And it was the coronation. So, the UK is a place that is a liberal democracy, apparently, in the world, and I think probably that it feels like that most of the time. But I was really, really surprised around the time of the coronation that I felt like I was on a different planet because there was all these very old-fashioned things happening. They pick who the next king's going to be behind this closed door thing. There were protesters that were being arrested for holding up a sign that said "Not my king," and then they held up blank signs that said nothing, and so they were arrested for that. And then someone insulted, and they
sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, it was, and the thing is, if you can't protest about a leader being, there's this argument that he doesn't have any power, but he meets the prime minister every week. He meets ambassadors. He, he has influence. And
exactly.
And he meets the prime minister every week, and it's not minuted. He owns shopping centres up and down the country. Anyway. So I thought, am I on a different planet? And I just thought, and I've got nothing against the man. I've never met him. I think he's had a strange life. But it was more of that was something that I felt, well, that's quite a nice theme for a song. And I wanted to, it's that expression of I'm an alien looking at this, what I thought is a different country to the one I live in, where this family have got power and everyone seems happy with it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So God and my right it actually is, but that didn't quite have the same ring to it and flow in the, then is the motto, but it's in Latin. It's actually in Norman French on the bottom.
Yeah,
of
I was
the
going to say.
Of the,
I was trying. Yeah. Dieu est mon droit, or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Exactly.
French. Yeah.
And then the shame on those who think bad of us is on the Scottish emblem, and so a lot of it is just translated from the royal crest.
Golden crown is passed along a bloodline stripped of power, a bloodline there to serve, with wealth accumulated from an empire, with influence the others on the left. Shame on you to think bad of it. The sun will always set on rule Britannia. We'll attack with impunity, and then we'll set you free. Lessons from the past, a family of secrets, and influence and power.
Jim, do you have other questions about songs? I have some.
Yeah, I got
but
a quick one.
Give you an opportunity to jump in if
Oh,
you want to.
Yeah, I'll real quick one. My favorite song by you is Kimberella. It's just awesome, and it's like a earworm for me. I keep listening to it over and over again. Really like it. But I have a question. It appears to me that you like to experiment with time signatures in your music. Is that correct? Because I was trying to figure them out sometimes, and they don't always make sense to me.
Yeah, what's interesting is that they often end up in the end being 4/4 according to my DAW.
Okay.
So in my head they make sense, and sometimes they've got triplets and things in them. And I remember, and I don't know if that comes back to like a sort of classical music basis.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. And I remember being in a piano lesson when I must have been like 15 or something, because I'd written a song for Beaver, and the guitar part went ding 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 ding. I can't do it really because it doesn't work. But the times it sort of went 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2, and then I remember I was playing a piano thing, and my piano teacher was saying, right, this one's in an unusual time signature in a Hungarian dance, which goes 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2, and that just seemed to be a natural. So that's often a time signature that I use, and it's often just the way that I strum, and sometimes triplets and things are often in there.
Yeah.
Kimbrella's one where I deliberately changed the drum beats in the start, and then
it's confusing a little bit, when I was trying to go through it. I could hear the 4/4, and then all of a sudden you do something, I'm like, wait, what's that? And then you go back to 4/4, and I'm like, okay. So
the other thing that's nice with DAWs and delay and things is that you can create really interesting rhythms with delays that you never knew were there in the first place. So some of the songs have got, certainly some of the like lead guitar bits. I'm an okay guitarist, but I'm definitely not a sort of 1980s metal soloist. Yeah, exactly. That's never been my thing. So creating something interesting with delay effects, and you can. So I think sometimes that adds to the rhythms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like that one too. That's one of the ones that, like, I have all these different songs that kind of move in and out of position for me as I'm listening through this. And that's one of the ones that's like really starting to be an earworm for me as well. I like that piano or whatever it is, whatever sound you use.
Yeah, it's like an electric piano. And when the sort of second bit where it sort of starts to build up, that was entirely by fortune. I put a reverse pitch shift delay on it, and it all of a sudden it just made it go boom boom like this. So I really like that. It's good, like a boom like that sort of sound.
Yeah,
and it's happening on both sides, so it's sort of canning in across, and
and that's one of the ones I feel like the bass is like kind of a fat, rich. I don't know. It feels I really like the sound of it as well.
It's kind of
like loungy.
Yeah.
Cool.
simple. Shared past, left and right. Complex and simple. Shared past, left and right. Traces and footprints. Echoes in time. Traces and footprints. Echoes in time.
I like a melodic sort of bass and then it's, and that's one thing with learning the drums. It's like trying to fit the bass and drums together so that they drive the song, but then moving it around so that I think that's one thing that I try to do, that, when it switches, when the drums and the switches, the bass stays the same, or maybe it doesn't, but that moves, it's the same thing you've heard before, but it's just switched around a bit.
So what's this song about? Complex and simple.
Yeah. So,
Is it simple or complex? The explanation.
Well, yeah. So, who knows? So, so Kimberella is about a billion-year-old fossil that they found, which is something close to the ancestor of all bilateral animals. So things that have two sides. So basically anything that's not a jellyfish.
God.
And I thought it'd be quite a nice thing to write a song about, like an ancient creature that you never heard of, but make it sound like it's about something that it's made to sound a bit more grand than it is, and it was complex and also simple at the same time, and it had a left and a right.
Yeah, left and right. Traces and footprints.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so we'll jump over to another song that's kind of segues into that. Not exactly, but like this is one of the ones that's like one of my favorites right now. Survival of the Fittest. I really like that one. I just like the philosophical message in this. Like, I think it's really interesting. And I like when it says rose and rose and rose, rose and rose.
Yeah. So I'm a scientist, really, and I thought it would be, in science, it's not something that really, it's not an emotional thing, is it? And I just liked the idea that you could write a song about, genes and, passing on genetic material, but make it sound more, because it is amazing. It's amazing that we exist. It's amazing that, all of these things, but you could just to make it sound more poetic. And I thought it'd be quite funny to write it from the genes perspective, that this is a poor gene. And it's almost like a lounge piano thing, like a crooning song. And then the gene sort of like, it's the one that's been discarded. It's like the, it's the bird tooth or whatever that,
you're right.
We didn't want that gene anymore.
You don't need it anymore.
Yeah. The human tail. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's on the, but
I think it's awesome because there's like this contrast. It's like, I'm just a machine.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I'm a machine with emotions and like I'm complicated. I have all these things. Like, okay, am I just a machine or am I more than a machine? Right? That's like the mixed message in there. And I thought that was really cool.
I'm just a bundle of genes looking to survive. I'm just a machine, a complicated machine. A machine with thoughts and feelings, emotions and love. It doesn't mean I can't love. An interconnecting web, weaving in and out, rolls on and 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 rolls on. And I came up to this point. Goodbye, I've been selected out. Dragon tooth, I've been selected out. You want me, but you don't really want to have me.
Yeah, I liked you doing the rows on rows on rows on rows, like getting higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that fun to do? Was that hard to do?
That was one of the most enjoyable ones to sing, and it's although I mean I should have learned this by now, but you can have a capo on a guitar, and you can I can change the key of anything and yet I still just end up writing a riff wherever it comes to me, and then never transposing it, and then end up with something that I can't quite sing.
Yeah.
So that bit going higher and higher.
Jim
That's
can
the
really-
worst.
Just me absolutely at the edge of my vocal. I've got a low. I haven't got the world's greatest vocal range.
I try not to
but,
put too much guitar down until I know I can sing in that key.
Yeah,
Because you can't change the key of a guitar. You can change the key of a synthesizer, but not the guitar. Not properly.
Homo heidelbergensis, another science one on the last of which is about man making fire and discovering fire. That one I had a capo on the 5th fret. I was recording it, and it just was too high for me. And I stopped and I thought, what am I doing? Why have I got a capo on the 5th fret? I just take the capo off and I can sing it. So I completely re-recorded it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I got some more, Jim. You want to
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So two of my the first favorites I had, when the full album was released, "Lying on the Tarmac," which we already talked about, and then my very favorite, and probably it'll stay this way, "Under the Lion's Gaze."
Under a Lion's Head.
Head. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I started digging into what I think the lyrics mean, or that they're referencing, and what it's talking about. I think it's alluding to the Lion Mountains. Is that what in the Sierra Leone, or is it?
It is. It's Sierra Leone. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Sierra
where,
Leone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I started. I went down a rabbit hole reading about that, thinking that's probably what it was, because it mentioned. I think, is it called Province of Freedom?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Yeah. But I love the song. I love the just the sound of it, the feel of it, and everything. And I think that was, maybe you mentioned somewhere that maybe that was a previous song.
Yeah. So that was it was, but it wasn't as good as that. And but I always really liked, there's something about that one. That's my personal favorite one as well, because it just came together really nicely. And so that was an old one, but I didn't really have any lyrics. So I went to Sierra Leone a couple of years ago, and I'm an anaesthetist, or an anesthesiologist is, I suppose, what you call them in America.
Oh, cool.
So I went just for 2 weeks. I thought I was going to teach, but I didn't. I went to do some anesthetics for some operations, and I absolutely love the place. It's really, really, it's a very, very poor country, but people were absolutely lovely, really beautiful place. And I kind of wanted to write a song about it, but I don't want to patronize the country. You don't want to do a sort of Band-Aids kind of, look at them really poor and that sort of thing. So I wanted it to be kind of uplifting, but also and it just seemed to fit that song, because I think it's kind of uplifting, but at the same time, it's got a sort of melancholic thread to it. And so I've decided to pick something from it. One of the surreal moments of the trip was that because we were in a Catholic hospital, and so they decided to take us to go and meet some monks. So I was imagining some monks in Sierra Leone were going to be, I wasn't really sure what they were going to be like. So anyway, we went there, and they were just these guys.
Were they shooting hoops?
Yeah, exactly. We drank beer with them and did karaoke.
It was like Monty Python.
Yeah, so it was. They were lovely guys, and they were having I'm sure they were doing good out there, but it was just
Hey,
completely not what I
monks
was
make
expecting.
good beer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, famously, don't they? Yeah.
Found.
So that was about that, because I thought it was a good experience, and I wanted to capture Sierra Leone, and I'm impressed that you figured that one out, because that is I think that's one of the obscure ones, really.
I had to do a lot of searching. I was like, okay, this might mean something. Listening to lyrics. I think the lyrics were on, or no, they weren't on there. I don't think they were on Bandcamp. For the singles, they were like Kimberella.
So they were on some. Yeah, I put them on DistroKid, so they get uploaded to some of the streaming platforms.
Gotcha. Yeah, but yeah, that's a beautiful song. So cool. And like the lyrical subject matter is like funny, like shooting hoops and whatever. It's like, and it's such this melancholy song, It's like, wistful, I thought that was really cool. But yeah, so that was cool. Jim?
Yeah, I got a serious one. Why is Battenberg uncertain about its principles?
That is serious.
So that I'll tell you about that one's about something as well, but it really has nothing to do with that. I just thought it sounded funny because it's like it's nearly a scientific, Heisenberg uncertainty principle, but then it's a cake. So I just thought that was, I don't know. I don't even know where it came from. It just it popped into my head one day, and I just thought that's funny. But the song itself is about a footballer who would be a soccer player for you called Rio Ferdinand, who played for England, and then he was dropped. And he was dropped slightly controversially because he's essentially his brother and the I'll put it politely, but his brother and the then captain of England fell out. John Terry fell out with lots of people, and by falling out, I mean generally did quite unpleasant things to people. But anyway, and so then he was dropped. So I don't know why I chose that episode to write a song about, because it was pretty mundane, but I thought it'd be quite funny. I don't know Rio Ferdinand, but as a person, but I imagine he's not into sort of rock music particularly.
I really like that song. But I thought it was like a little bit different sound than the rest of the song. I felt like especially the beginning, very rocky kind of sort of. I thought it was cool though. Yeah. And is that the one? I'm trying to think which one. There's one. Oh shoot! I'll get them like mixed up here. I don't think I took notes on that one. But there's one that kind of like has a choppy guitar, and the tempo picks up. Might have been that one actually.
It's probably that one. Yeah, it's probably that one.
Like eventually the tempo picks up, and then it's like sort of a droning guitar, like sort of kinda. Yeah, that's really cool.
Reasons, what possible reasons? First strike and I'm out. Tell me reasons, what possible reasons? First strike and I'm out. What possible reasons? First strike and I'm
The theme from episodic espionage caper.
Yeah. And that's obviously for copyright reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when I first was listening to that one, I'm like, okay, is this a bunch of like James Bond movie titles or phrases, or what was this? And of course, I started looking up different ones, like different film titles and stuff like that. Yeah. But it was pretty cool. Yeah. You want to talk about that one? Like, tell me about that. Like, so, how you came up with that, or what you decide, how you decided.
Yeah, so that was that was when I was in Carlisle. I was in a small room, smaller than this. There's not much happening, and then thinking of things to write. like songs to write on an iPad, and they announced that the next James Bond film was going to be called Skyfall.
Skyfall.
And there was no like, nothing more than that. They hadn't said who'd written the song. So I thought, right,
so did you try to like send your name in to do this theme song for that movie? Yeah, there you go.
So it didn't work out. There were
it didn't.
Yeah. But it was on SoundCloud, just like because it was easier to upload it onto SoundCloud, and there was about 900 listens in the Philippines. So I think people were trying to find the Adele song.
There you go. So you get those listens any way you can get them.
Exactly. So, but I decided for something where I potentially, make streaming money from, that perhaps copyright infringements may prevent me from explicitly calling it that. So I just thought it'd be interesting to try, often you just write the song that comes into your head, don't you? You don't try and write a song in a particular style. So I thought it'd be interesting to try and write a Bond theme. So that is, if there was ever a Citizens of the Air Bond soundtrack, it would sound something like that. And then, of course, like again with all these things, Radiohead then comes along a couple of years later and does it better. But I'm not Radiohead.
Just don't even bother comparing yourself, okay?
Yeah, exactly. I know. I'm over it.
You do you, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Be with a bunch of guys there. I mean, it's just one of you. So
yeah, it's just one of me. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Come on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would put up most of these songs on this album with Radiohead. So I would. You're in the running for definitely in the running for some of the stuff they put out for sure.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really funny. I started laughing. I was like, okay, so I'm trying to in my head go through, try to identify all these different titles and phrases and stuff like that. But cool.
It's meant to partly be a joke again. So I'm glad that you found it amusing
But you also made it your own. I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's one of the because the Bond theme. To make it sound like a Bond song, you have to get the Bond theme in there somehow. You have to have like
I heard it,
or you have to and then you like ding 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 ding. You gotta have those bits, but then what you don't want to make it is you don't want to make it too obvious because then it's just a rip off. So you've got to. So it's quite hard, and then and also you want to kind of build up to it because you don't want to just put that in straight away because then it's really obvious and you know
they always build up kind of slow and towards the beginning, and then you blast it out, Skyfall.
Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
Dressed to kill, a gamble, a secret, a devil, specters and lies. China with love, dressed to kill, a gamble, a secret, a devil, specters and lies. From China with love, Skyfall will paint the sky with blood. Inside a bullet in your hand.
Orpheus and Eurydice. That was awesome. That's a great way to end the album. First of all, it's like a fade out type song, not literally, but like mood wise. And of course, then I guess I should have probably known more about this Greek story, but I went down that rabbit trail as well. And I thought that was really cool too, and just the song itself, but also just like thinking about like that story, right? Don't look back, and so I thought that was really cool and interesting. But
so I did Latin and Greek at school, which not many people did Greek, but I didn't. I think I did it in Latin because I think it was in Latin because I didn't do very much in Greek. We just sort of wrote sentences and stuff. but
they
it was
kind of go. They kind of go between, right? They have Greek. They have
exactly.
Latin. Yeah.
So it was definitely in Latin, but that we translated it. But I think it is a Greek story, isn't it? So anyway, but it is. Yeah, I think Virgil. Anyway, whoever wrote it. Anyway, it was in Latin that I did it. But the story I thought was quite. It's one of those myths that's through time that has got a bit of a timeless quality to it. And I had a little, sort of mournful guitar riff with a tune, and I thought it'd be quite a nice
the
thing to write. And the trumpets.
That trumpet sound was perfect for that. I think.
I thought it's like the sort of counter melody to the voice. And then, because initially when I recorded, I didn't have drums on it, and I can't remember why I decided to put the drums on it. But then the drums just seemed to make it like it. I wouldn't say it was dragging beforehand, but they really brought energy, but not too much energy, because you want it to retain its kind of mournfulness, but it kind of gives it some impetus and.
It's kind of like I don't even know how to describe the drums. I mean, they're there. I can hear them in my head right now. So I remember them from the song, remembering it, but I'm like, it's not like overpowering, or it's kind of like
no, it's just
kind of sets this cadence sort of kind of, really cool.
To descend to Tartarus, venom diffused her body, robbed her of her best years. I've come to bring her back. Weep, you bloodless spirits of beauty and grace, songs to break a heart Hades can't ignore. Don't look back, 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 don't look back.
I was going to say that was one that I really enjoyed. That was one that I'd made a demo of a long time ago, and it sounded really good, but it's obviously like crackly, and it wasn't well produced. But sometimes actually catching that energy, but making the production values better is quite hard.
Yeah, it's a balance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was really pleased with how that one turned out. That's
Do you find that same thing, Jim? Like with the production versus like capturing the feel and the in the moment feel and energy and stuff like that. It's hard to balance that. There's
a balance, definitely.
You've mastered it, right?
No, I've mastered nothing. It's a continuous battle, definitely.
So I have some other questions. Jim, you want to jump in with anything?
No, go ahead. I don't have a lot more.
We pretty much, we covered most of the questions we had.
I had something about like the first album mentioned nuclear physics quite a bit, so I can tell you were interested in science in general. Was it?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things on there. I've listened to it a couple times. I'm going to go back and listen to it more. Because I really like it a lot as well.
Yeah, so the title, the title was taken from the first song, which I wanted to write. I had this image of, that one, the first song on the first album that's one of the most recent. That was one of the songs that I wrote. There was a couple of songs that I wrote for the album, if you know what I mean. So on the second album, it's War Dogs and Three Little Piggies were brand new. The rest were reworked in some way. And on the first album, it's Nebula, In My Pocket, which is about a lockdown.
Oh, yeah. That's cool too.
And then I wrote that on Ben Nevis. That's an unusual one because I wrote it in my head. So I came up with I'd had the guitar riff, and then I thought of the bass line and the lyrics and stuff, just walking in the middle of lockdown. Cool. And I thought, okay. And then there was another one. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, but that was
like
the first song.
Charm Cork. That's one too.
Yes. Yeah. I've got. I'll tell you an interesting story about Charm Cork. So to me, it was really obvious. Again, like, all you had to do was Google it, Charm Cork, and then it tells you what it's about. And the idea is that you can't really fall in love with a subatomic particle because it's neither exists or it doesn't exist. And there's lots of, they have strange. So I was trying to put that kind of into, the Wikipedia page has got half the lyrics on it. And I just thought it'd be funny. Yeah. And the reason I did that was because the first version of it had this little synthesizer like that went over the top, which is in the recorded version is kind of like the delay guitars playing that line. And I imagined it was a man and a quark having a duet, but they can't ever properly have a duet because you can't fall in love with a subatomic particle because it doesn't really exist in the way that you think. So, but the title was Thermonuclear War. So I had this idea of writing a song about a star, the sun, and I quite liked the term thermonuclear warmth because you think your head is expecting it to be war, but then it's the smallest little change to warmth, and it's just then it's a nice thing, isn't it? Thermonuclear warmth is great.
Yeah,
thermonuclear war isn't, and it's like you're expecting it.
Yeah. You're reframing it.
Exactly. We're taking it back.
This is like pop music for scientists.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just...
It's kind of like things that people don't write songs about. Because I'm happy in my life. I don't need to write songs about breakups and all this sort of stuff. I just I want to channel some emotion, but I thought it was quite funny to write songs that were emotional about things that we don't think of as being emotional. Really, it's like that dichotomy.
It's ironic.
Yeah. It feels like Radiohead maybe has. I don't know. I don't think any of them were ever scientists, but maybe they were. But they kind of have some of that feel to a lot of their lyrics and stuff. But so that's interesting too. But I'm really looking forward to going back and listening to more of the first album as well. I made a note. You have 2 or 3 songs on the newest album that have trumpets in them. You mentioned one of them, and then you have a lot of trumpets. I shouldn't say a lot, but on the first album as well. And so Capstad. What is Capstad? Am I saying that right?
Okay, yeah.
That one has trumpets in it, but I don't know what the meaning of that is. I haven't had time to go and dig into that one yet. But
so that one is it's another country that I went to. It's South Africa. So Capstad is the Afrikaans for Cape Town.
Okay.
So Cape.
Okay.
Stad is,
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was, again, it was similar to my experience in Sierra Leone, although it's quite a different country. But I don't know. I don't know of any South Africans that have listened to it, and it's difficult. But it's difficult. You want to be respectful of a country's history, and you don't. But going to South Africa, I was much younger, so I was in my mid-20s. I'd never been anywhere. I'd never been to Africa before, and it was so different from what I was expecting. And learning about the history of South Africa and apartheid, and then also Truth and Reconciliation after it, and how it became the modern country it is after all that was just kind of remarkable. And it obviously wasn't without its problems, but it's also a beautiful place. So, and I had a really interesting time there, really enjoyed it. And it's trying to balance something that's, it's about, I suppose it was a little song about my reflection on going there and, through the avenue of going wine tasting. So there's a bit of it's sort of a recounting of a day where me and some of the other students were there, went to Stellenbosch, went wine tasting, and then went back to Cape Town. And then went to the Cape Point, because that's where the beach is and stuff in the evening.
We breathe the Atlantic. The sun sails down onto the ocean. You are my pearl, my unpolished diamond. I'll throw you back for someone else to find you. Red wine coats my lips, basking in the sun. I have expensive tastes, but a bottle of the cheapest will go back through kindly chap. A little space alone. Truth and reconciliation. Wherever you want to be. A little space alone. Truth and reconciliation. Wherever you want to be.
Yeah, so it's trying to, obviously apartheid was it's quite easy for a white middle class Englishman who's never had had a pretty easy life to make any comments about things like that. But learning about the world and thinking about it's important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So the trumpets, like, do you have a fascination with trumpets, or you just think it's good to help flesh out, your sound, or?
Yeah, I think they're quite different, aren't they? Like ska music and that sort of thing has lots of trumpets in it, but I think I'm using them in a slightly different way. I'm using them for a different tone than that.
It sounds more like I don't know, 70s tone or something. I don't know how to say that. On the old soul music,
Yeah,
like Chicago kind of or something. Like it's kind of like that.
I can't even remember why I did it, but the first time I used them was on Therapod, which was one of the first songs that I finished. And basically, that was me I was trying to write a Neil Young song when I wrote Therapod, but it doesn't particularly sound like Neil Young. But then at one point, I thought I'm going to put trumpets on it, and I don't really know why, but I just thought it sounds, it's got a kind of like guitar, like sort of a kind of pretty standard rock guitar riff, and I thought that would be unusual if I put trumpets on it. And I did that with a couple of songs on the first album. I'd have Janus was like and written as like a 90s guitar riff, and then I thought I was listening to there was a song called Adar Newland, which was by a guy called Griff Rhys, who was in the Super Furry Animals. He did an album, or at least with a Moroccan or Algerian band. I can't, and I kind of like those sounds of the not the guitar. I can't remember what the name of the instrument is, but the sort of like Northern African guitar sound. And I was trying to put a bit of that on because I thought that doesn't go with a 90s rock riff. So trying to make a song where my rock riff is countered against something else, and I just like the sound of the trumpets. I thought they worked.
Is it with
in a weird way
with a MIDI controller?
They're MIDI trumpets. I can't play trumpets, unfortunately. So it's MIDI trumpets. One of my friends.
I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I'll just say that yet to everything you say.
The next album.
You learn drums, so there you go.
Yeah, I've had a go at trumpet, and I don't have the natural. I can't do it, I don't think. But anyway, maybe.
I know Jim has talked a lot about like when he's writing songs and putting songs together and adding sounds, like he'll like put a lot of sounds in and then he'll end up stripping them back out. Sometimes like it's almost like too much sometimes because you want to layer, but you also want to just kind of feel like, okay, I'm doing too much now. do you ever run into that or is that?
So that's, I listened to that, to the podcast, and it was really interesting.
When we did the Airedale?
Yeah. I know what you mean. I don't think I I don't tend to, because the way that I've usually built it is I usually go for some drums and a bass, or something instead of a bass. So like one or two times it's like a synthesized bass, but usually it's bass.
Mm-hmm.
And then I usually put a rhythm guitar and then some sort of lead on top of it.
Okay.
And then in the bits where it's a bit empty, I'll add sounds, if you got, or not, depending on if I think it needs it or not. But I suppose, yeah. And I think I've generally just thought about it in those terms rather than trying different things out. And I suppose that's just a sort of composition method, isn't it? The flip side of it is that
I'm sure there's a lot of different ways you'd approach it,
Yeah, that perhaps Jim's got more scope for experimentation, putting something in and then taking it out. Whereas the problem when you record something once and you like it is you're very reticent to then change it, because the danger is that you do something that doesn't sound as good and you can't replicate what you did the first time. That's always my fear, although you can just record two things.
Yeah.
You get attached to the first take of things. It's very odd. I think, especially if it sounds in a way that you didn't expect.
I think, like you were saying, with your first vocals, you start layering vocals on, doubling them up or tripling them up. I'll put in a lot of stuff in there just because I feel like it needs so much. The more, the better. But sometimes it's not exactly the case. Sometimes keeping it simple makes a song great, which is true with a lot of great songs out there.
Yeah, that was definitely that with the vocals. I felt that less is more on the second album. That the temptation was to fill it up, and some of that is just not being confident with your voice and liking the sound of it, and that takes a while to get used to, doesn't it? And and knowing how to EQ it better, and working out that even just microphone position. One of the things I find that's hard when you're recording something is if you're in a studio and you've got a producer there, you'll play the guitar and they'll put the microphone where they think it sounds best. Well, it's basically impossible for me to do that because I don't really know how it's going to sound until I play it back, because I'm in the room with the amp with headphones
you're the
on.
Yeah.
When I'm singing, I don't know how it's going to sound until so experimenting with position and all that sort of stuff makes quite a big difference. But so it just takes a bit of time to get, and when something sounds bad, it's hard to know whether did you record it badly?
Oh yeah.
Is it because you've not EQ'd it right? Have you over compressed it? Have you under compressed it? What if there's what aspect is it that's making it sound bad? Takes a long time to get your head round.
Got a few more questions, if that's okay. Wrapping up. So what is your favorite song you've ever written?
So it's either Under a Lion's Head, for how it turned out, or maybe Charm Cork, because it's got like a little narrative, and that is one that I could sit and play on a acoustic guitar. Most of the songs are quite difficult to reproduce, just playing it, whereas that one I can, and I quite like the little story to it. Maybe.
Cool. So that leads us to another question. Do you ever perform live or have any inkling to?
So
you can play Charm Cork,
Yeah. So there is two live versions on that are on streaming, which is I decided that I'd do versions as if I would be playing it live. So there's only one guitar and there's only me singing. And the other rule was that barring like a dreadful mistake, it was first take, because it was deliberately like a live performance. Basically, I only had one microphone input at that point, so I could only record one at once. So I had to. That is not completely live, but close as I could do. I was offered a gig, or I was offered a few. The problem is, it's knowing how to. It's like when you've written a song in a studio. When Radiohead did Kid A and all that sort of thing. They weren't songs they played live. They wrote them in a studio and then take them out. On the road. You have to work out how to play them. So
trying to reproduce them is difficult sometimes. Yeah,
exactly. I've got and sometimes some of the lead guitar parts on various things I may have only played 3 or 4 times ever. Because I've only played it when I've recorded it. Jim's probably the same. I can't especially. And then when I was re-recording everything, I had to work out how to play all the songs again, because I know the sort of things that I do, but and some of them are definitely not. I've definitely not played it the same way. So I'd have to work out how to play them. And I think a lot of it would work in a band setting. It wouldn't work just me playing. I think in general, the songs don't sound as strong. They're just not, the strength is more in the arrangement and things than, and I think so. So I'd like to, but I think time-wise, the nice thing about being a bedroom music producer, although this is where I do it, it's not in my bedroom, it's a study, I guess, is that you can do it on your own terms in your own time. It's not a regular commitment. I can do it at 10 o'clock in the morning on a day off, or I can do it in late at night without. Whereas you can't really do that in a band. So I think I'd love to, but it's probably unlikely. Now, we did play live. I much preferred being in the recording studio, writing songs, practicing with other bandmates. I was never that fussed about playing live. I totally get it, but at the same, there is an I love going to watch live music, but we were never, you go through a hard phase, don't you, in playing to a pub of 5 people.
Yeah. The payoff's not always there.
Yeah.
Versus the creative, creativity and what you can do at home and, kind of be in control of everything. And shape it. Yeah.
And I think to be a good live band, I think being a good live band and being a good studio band are 2 slightly different things. And I genuinely think it's really, really, really hard to be a good live band, and it's a lot of effort and a lot of time. And obviously you can then go into recording studio and you can record straight away, but you don't have to. And sometimes you don't capture it. There's lots of bands that I've seen live who I think, wow, I wasn't expecting that at all. And then you hear the record.
Ways.
Yeah, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. What are your long-term goals with writing music? Are you going to keep, now that you've got this rolling, it's snowballed, you're going to keep, keep doing that?
I think so. Yeah. I'm going to, so it's writing and recording. So I mastered that remix album for Amateur Ornithologist. And I've, I'd like, it's things like mixing, mastering, recording other people. Recording other people will be tricky because until I know how to, or have the capacity to record real drums, I think I'd be cheating people really. But working with other people and that could be fun. But I mean, I'm intending to basically improve, and I'm moderately weight. I've got probably about 5 or 6 half songs ready for the next album. I've got a handful. I've probably got 10 or 15 left of old songs that I've never turned into. But I probably use the low hanging fruit. So the next ones are generally the ones that are a bit more challenging or not as strong. So I may not record all of them. Yeah. So I'd like to carry on making albums and I think the aspiration is just to get better and better at recording so that they sound more like, I think the first album to second album is a reasonable jump, in my mind, in production. And I think I've spent a bit of time in thinking about how I record it. You can probably see I've installed some acoustic panels and stuff. So I've upgraded my studio stuff for the third album, and I'm working on the sort of sound, how it's going to sound. I haven't quite decided yet.
Cool.
And it's all guitar at the moment. I haven't messed about with synthesizers, and I don't feel like I've pushed drums, bass, and guitars with some as far as potentially I could at the moment. So there's lots of experimentation.
So do you feel like you will have some collaboration, or just
I think
as
so.
It comes?
I think so.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. Exactly. I think as it comes, me and Daniel had spoken about doing at some point a sort of like collaboration between us of, I don't know how that would sound actually, but like something that's not either of our bands and do something a bit different. And then I got back in touch with one of the guys that I used to be in a band with, not the guy that wrote the lyrics, but another guy who has suggested we try and record some of the stuff that we didn't use or that we didn't really record properly, just as a bit of a sort of homage to the past. But,
that's cool. Yeah, that's great. Good. Okay. Last question that I have. Jim may have another one. And this was Jim's question. If you could write a song with any musician, who would that be?
Besides Airedale.
What'd you say, Jim?
I said besides Airedale.
Besides Airedale. Well, an Airedale collaboration. We had
that's a given.
An Airedale.
Go ahead. Proceed.
Yeah, I think that would be good fun. Definitely. That's a really hard one because what you want is it. I think someone who is. So one of my weaknesses, I think, or definitely my weakness, is playing the drums. So I've got a reasonable feel for rhythm, but it takes me quite a long time to record, and I'm not particularly technical at the drums. A lot of the drums, although they may sound slightly unusual types, things like that, I don't think a lot of it is not that complex. So I think someone who is really good at percussion, that would be interesting, and maybe some, so that's hard to say because I can't then think of anyone.
It could be somebody big too, like Elton John or something.
Yeah. So I think I'm not. That's a very hard one, and I'm going to. That is a
Johnny Greenwood.
See, I think I'd avoid Radiohead because the temptation, because I would end up sound. Yeah, and also, I try and avoid being too obviously like Radiohead.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Johnny Marr or something like that. Maybe that would be quite a good one.
Yeah. That's a good choice.
Yeah, that would be quite good.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't lose with that.
Yeah, go on, Johnny Marr.
Perfectly fine answer. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
I think I'll go with that one too, personally.
Yeah.
Is that yours, Jim?
That would be.
Did he take yours? Sorry.
Or Steve Kilbey from the church, of course. Or anybody from the church.
Yeah, of course. There you go. Cool.
Pastor present.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up. Unless Jim, do you have any other questions?
I think that was good.
Yeah. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, pleasure.
Get on this late night for you.
Yeah,
it's not
too
late,
bad.
Right?
I mean, it's very dark.
You're like 9 o'clock,
since about 5 o'clock. 9 o'clock now. Yeah.
So, thanks for joining us, and we'll. I'll put out all the links, and try to promote and get more of your music into the ear canals. So.
Yeah. And it's just nice to chat about music, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's what we love to do. So So I really appreciate your time, and
pleasure.
All right.
Yeah. Good.
Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully, we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Love to hear what you are coming out with next. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Jim had very briefly discussed collaborating. I think that would be really fun to do.
Absolutely.
But
yeah, I think Jim. I think you mentioned you hoping for some vocal collaboration, even.
I always want vocals because I can't.
Yeah, Jim's
I never like when I record personally. Anybody wants to sing? Definitely.
Absolutely.
But definitely. There's much more to contribute as well. I think from Jono. So, all right, take care. All right. Well, thank you so much. Looking forward to talking again, and I really appreciate it. All right, take care.
Yeah, great.
Good talking to you.
See you later, guys.
Yep.
See ya.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
See you.
And that is going to wrap it up for this conversation with Jono of Citizens of Yeah. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Jono is such a great, down-to-earth, friendly guy. And I love so much that he is so curious about science and a bit of a fellow nerd when it comes to scientific things. He incorporates that as well as his personal experiences of travel into his lyrical content and marries up these subject matters with this moving, transcendent music. I just love it, and I encourage you to go check him out on Bandcamp. It's easy to find, Citizens of Yeah, with an exclamation mark at the end. You can also find him on Spotify. But again, I highly encourage you to go and check him out. I know he's working on his next set of songs. I know some of them may be older that he's reworking, but probably he's writing some new material as well. So you won't have long to wait. I just can't say enough about the production quality of his material. So go check it out. And I would like to wrap up this episode by including my very favorite track from his latest album, Citizens Republic of Yeah. A song about his travels and visits with an order of monks in Sierra Leone, a country in West Africa. We've got some really great episodes in line for you guys, so definitely stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of excitement coming up for the next episode, so be on the lookout. And until then, here's Under a Lion's Head by Citizens of Yeah.